Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross with the big show for you today. Major tennis season 2020 is behind us, but we roll on with two 250 events this week. Alexander Zverev, Andrey Rublev bringing home some hardware. Rublev in St. Petersburg, Zverev in Cologne, and I will get into both of those finals at the top of the show. But the main part of today's episode is a conversation with Bret McCormick of the Sports Business Journal. He does some of the best reporting, I would argue the best reporting, on tennis from a business perspective when it comes to money, when it comes to structure, some politics, all of that kind of behind the scenes business angle to tennis. Bret McCormick is the guy. So I was really excited to have him on because I feel like a lot of these topics have been swirling recently. We get into the PTPA. We get into an exclusive from Bret where he obtained a document that really detailed the ATP's plans for the future. That'll be the bulk of our conversation. We also get into Hawkeye versus FOXTENN and what is the future of line calling in tennis. So I think you're going to enjoy that. Don't go anywhere, but we will start with these two finals. Let's start with St. Petersburg. Andrey Rublev winning another title. Man, his one dimension has won 5 titles in the last 12 months. And I wanted to find a way to kind of contextualize that and portray how many titles that is in such a short period of time. So I looked at the rankings, I pulled it up. I wanted a veteran, a good veteran, a top 10 veteran. And I clicked on David Goffin, 4 career titles. David Goffin, great player in his prime, 28, 29 years old, 4 titles in his career. Andrey Rublev, 5 titles in the last 12 months. Not too bad. 4 titles in 2020 where he's done the bulk of his work. Only Novak Djokovic has won that many titles this season. And Rublev is second on the tour in terms of victories this year. So his brilliant campaign continues. He beat Borna Coric, who is putting together a lot, more consistent results as of late. So Coric is also kind of on a good path. Rublev takes this one 7-6, 6-4. I want to start with general match notes. Then I'll get a little bit into the chronology of the match, not in too much depth. But first of all, I want to just say it was a lot of fun. My favorite part about watching this match is we're talking about 2 players who care about every single point. Unbelievable compete levels. Probably when we're talking about players under the age of 25, these 2 have maybe my 2 favorite mental games in terms of their fight on a point in, point out basis. So it was fun to watch them share the court. But it was also evident that Rublev outmatched Coric from the baseline really handedly. His depth, his pace, his early hitting was too much for Coric, and Borna looked suffocated, and he looked a level below Andrey Rublev from the baseline. Not only that, but Rublev was the more consistent player, the more steady, more solid player, less prone to errors throughout. So the medium to long rallies were going Rublev's way on a very consistent basis. And I think one of the major markers of how much better Rublev was than Coric from the baseline is second serves won. Andrey Rublev has long had a second serve problem, which he's still working on, but it's still not great. And Rublev won 71% of his second serve points, 17 of 24. Wow, Andrey Rublev doesn't always protect his second serve that well. You can go back and watch this match. It wasn't that his second serves were great. It wasn't that Borna Coric wasn't taking control off the second serve return and hitting good aggressive returns. That wasn't it either. It was literally that Rublev was recovering and winning every single point. Not every point, but the points that he won. It was generally that he was starting from behind and actually coming back and, coming back and winning the point. So that was a red flag from Coric that he could take control with early aggression off the second serve return and still come out on the short end of most of these points. We'll get to it, but let me save what I was about to say for later. One of the patterns that I think was really evident and working for Rublev was his backhand down the line. Andrey is a player who hits his backhand down the line with more comfort and more frequency than 80-90% of the players on tour. He can pull it down the line with regularity, and he doesn't need some kind of gaping opportunity to do so. He will do it from neutral, and he will do it well, and he will hit it hard. And with Coric, you want to attack his forehand side. You want to rush him on his forehand side. And I felt that Rublev's ability to pick his spots, but to take his backhand down the line with frequency and with effectiveness, really helped him exploit Coric's forehand side. And most of the short balls he was drawing was from that side. You'll notice that when Coric's forehand is rushed, and I've covered this at length, but when Coric's forehand, which is a long technique, his take back is long, his elbow gets very far away from his body, which is not always something that you recommend in forehand technique. But when that side is rushed, not only is it error prone, but it's sapped of all its heaviness. And that's something that was really evident during this match, that Rublev, again, he takes it early, he hits it hard, he hits with depth, he hits his backhand down the line, he hits his hard forehand cross court. All these things really attack that Coric forehand side and take away all of his time. And when his time is taken away, if he doesn't miss, he doesn't get anything on that ball. It's sapped of its heaviness, and then Rublev can attack. Another thing that I noticed in this match is Rublev's first serve is becoming a real weapon. He's getting stronger. He's getting physically stronger. And he's starting to hit his spots better, which is something that normally comes with age and experience, and it's certainly happening for Rublev. So all of these things propelled Rublev to victory. Why was it close? If it was such domination from Rublev, the reason it was close is Rublev couldn't return serve. Rublev won this match despite returning horribly. If you ask him, if you were to ask Andrey off the record, in my opinion, and based on his body language and what he was saying to his box and stuff, or not what he was saying, but how he was speaking to his box. I don't speak Russian. I think Rublev would give himself like an F for how he returned. And I would give him a C or a D. Rublev wasn't returning Coric's first serves for the most part. Couldn't get any kind of read on it, was leaning the wrong way, was reacting late, was just didn't have any kind of timing on his first serve return. And that kept Coric in the match. And that made this match intriguing. It made it tight at times. And in the first set, it actually looked like Borna was in the driver's seat. Because after both players held pretty easily throughout the set, and whenever Coric got into a tight spot, or Rublev for that matter, they could rely on their serve and their early aggression. It went to a tiebreak. And Coric played some of the most aggressive tennis that I've seen him play early in this tiebreak, approaching the net. Some brilliant points by Borna to go up 5-2 in this breaker. And what happens? Second serve, Coric hits a good, strong return, takes control. Rublev fends it off, defends a little bit, and Coric misses an easy forehand off of some squash defense from Rublev. He had all day to set up this forehand. It was a no-pace floater with decent depth, but just an easy miss from Coric. Still with the mini break after he misses this ball at 2-5. At 3-5, Coric takes charge again off the second serve return. This time, it's another continental grip defensive shot from Rublev on the forehand, but this one stays actually low, and it's hit with shallow in the court, so Coric actually needs to move inside the court to hit this, and he blows it again. A mid-court forehand that he hits wide. Another shot it's an attacking shot. It was right there for the taking for Coric. 2 chances to go up and to earn himself set points in the first set, and he misses it. Then at 5-4, he hits a forehand unforced error on the first ball. He had it. It was there. He could have stole this first set, and he makes 3 forehand unforced errors. At 5-all, it's one of those signature points that I was talking about, signature patterns I was talking about, where Rublev hits the backhand down the line to open up the point. Then he's able to step in and hit his power angle forehand from inside the court to draw an error. And then Coric pushes a forehand return long with Rublev serving it out at 6-5. In the second set, Coric is broken with a really loose game at 2-3. He hit a double fault in this game. He hit 2 backhand unforced errors. The backhand was not as steady throughout this match as he would like. And then the fourth point that Coric lost in this game was a ball that he chose not to volley, and it ended up landing well inside the baseline. So 4 mistakes from Coric in this game, 2-3, gifts it away, and he could not make any progress on Rublev's serve. The Russian did not face a break point. So 7-6, 6-4. Andrey Rublev wins another title. He was the better player in this match, couldn't figure out his return, and won the match anyway. Let us move on to the next final, which was Alexander Zverev against Felix Auger Aliassime. Whenever FAA is in a final these days, you point to his record, his 0-5 coming in, and now it is 0-6. Sasha Zverev winning 6-3, 6-3. This match was not competitive, not particularly entertaining, if I'm being honest, and a really all-around solid performance from Alexander Zverev. I've been impressed with Sasha's forehand ever since David Ferrer came on board. I feel like Ferrer is getting him to just hit through that shot more, to take some topspin off, to hit it flatter, to kind of put his racket head behind the ball a little bit more instead of dropping it under the ball and brushing up. You know, choosing his spots to really get through the ball and to just flatten that shot out. I think it's worked wonders. When Zverev hits that too loopy with his kind of Eastern-ish forehand grip, it's just weak. It just doesn't have anything on it. So he needs to flatten out that shot. That is when his forehand is effective, unless he's defending, and then I could see him just putting some air under it. But other than that, there's no damaging quality when Zverev loops his forehand. He needs to hit it flat. And I feel like Ferrer's getting him to do that. Zverev returned extremely well in this match. I was impressed with his first serve return. Felix is someone who does hit his first serve extremely hard and has a lot of action on it as well. And Zverev handled that beautifully and played a lot of neutral points off of his first serve return. Most importantly, Zverev found a really good balance between offense and defense, something that he was unable to do in the Jannik Sinner match when he bowed out in the French Open, and he was far too passive, far too defensive with both his intentions and his court positioning. And in terms of patterns, I also found that there was a pattern that was working really well for Zverev, similar to Rublev's propensity to hit the backhand down the line, which worked wonders against Coric in the final in Cologne. In the final in St. Petersburg. I found that Zverev did a really nice job anticipating Felix's cross-court backhands. Felix is someone who is the polar opposite of Andrey Rublev. He's not comfortable taking his backhand down the line. Most of his backhands go cross court. And when Felix went down the line with his backhand in this match, he, for the most part, missed. Could not find that shot at all. But mainly, he doesn't go for his backhand down the line. He hits his backhand cross court. So I found that Zverev was really leaning that way. It was giving him that extra moment to set up. And he took advantage of that by ripping backhands, aggressive backhands himself. So that was something that I felt Zverev got very comfortable with, just finding the FAA backhand, leaning cross court, giving himself that extra moment to set up because that's what anticipation will give you, and then taking advantage by just really cracking that gorgeous two-hander that Zverev possesses. With all that being said, FAA was not good in this match, and he will be really disappointed and was really disappointed, not only with this match in isolation, but also the fact that he can't seem to play well in a final, because not only has he lost 6 finals in a row, he has not won a set. Now, here was my stance after Marseille when Tsitsipas beat Felix in February, earlier this year. I defended FAA, and I said, look, all of these finals that Felix is playing, he is not the better player. Ever since losing to Laszlo Djere in Rio and Benoit Paire in Lyon, Matteo Berrettini on grass, Gael Monfils, when he was very hot in Rotterdam, and then Tsitsipas in Marseille. Of those matches, of those last 3 finals, I favor Felix in none of them. Similarly, against Zverev in Cologne, I do not favor Felix. Zverev is the better player, so I don't find it overly alarming that Felix hasn't been able to win any of these, especially taking into account his youth. But if he's not going to play well, and if he's not going to show up and play his best tennis, if he's not going to at least push his opponents, yeah, now it's beginning to become an alarming pattern. I still stand by this. The day will come when FAA is going to play an opponent in a final who he should beat, who he is superior than, he is better than. How is he going to handle that? Is he going to take care of business and win a final against a player who he is more talented than? That time is going to come, and I'm very curious to see how he handles that situation because it's inevitable. That's what I'm kind of waiting for. But FAA should be pretty disappointed in this. Far too many backhand errors. The technique even looked uncomfortable at times. But with his backhand, it's not that his intention is bad. I don't think he goes for too much on his backhand. I just think sometimes it's an imprecise shot. It's erratic. He doesn't get his footwork right. And I don't, sometimes I think technically it can go awry. On his forehand, it's a whole nother story. His forehand, he misses it because he's going for the wrong shot. He's pulling the trigger with no advantage in the rally. And one of the ways you can really tell that that's the case is when he misses wide from neutral. You should not miss wide from neutral. It doesn't make any sense. If you're missing wide from neutral, you're going for too much. You're picking a bad target. You're pressing. And I find that Felix is doing that often. He has no advantage in the rally. He should be trading the ball cross court, and he's missing wide. Shot selection. Now, when he gets an attackable ball, a ball that is short, a ball where he can step inside the court, or a ball where his opponent is out of position, a ball that he has every right to go all out for an attack. He's missing too many of those balls as well. because he's not giving himself any margin. It just seems like he is aiming for the lines practically. And in this case, he's missing by an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. It doesn't matter. You should not miss those balls. Maybe it's because he's not comfortable enough in his transition game to just add a little bit of margin, hit a more comfortable approach shot, and finish the next ball at the net. I don't know. But he constantly misses these mid-court forehands when he is in total command. So far too many unforced errors. Zverev played a great match, made him play extra balls, could play defense, could play offense, and just was the better player by far. There was no suspense in this match whatsoever. By the way, another thing, I know that I kind of lamented the viewing quality of this match. Another thing was the camera angle was terrible. Up in Mars, up in outer space, and the court wasn't mic'd well either. You couldn't really hear the ball hitting the racket, or hitting the strings, which always detracts from the experience, in my opinion. That is a good segue to our interview here on Monday Match Analysis, because with Bret McCormick of the Sports Business Journal, I get into tennis as a business, tennis as a product, and what the ATP's plans are moving forward. My first question to Bret is where I'll pick it up. One of the things I noticed in one of McCormick's most recent pieces about the ATP's plans for the future, for 2022 more specifically, is that according to this ATP document, which detailed their plans, tennis commands just 1.3% of global media television rights values. So of all the money that goes into sports, tennis is only the beneficiary of 1.3% of that money, of that television money, that ad revenue that goes, or not the ad revenue, but the rights revenue that goes to television networks or streaming networks or whatever it may be. 1.3%, despite the fact that tennis is the world's fourth most popular sport. So that's where I started with Bret. I asked, how could this possibly be? Surely the ATP is looking to change this.
Yeah, it underperforms in media rights, and so that's not good, because that's money left on the table. So a good example is American football, which I think in this case, I think it included college football as well, but at the least the NFL is, I think, around the 10th most popular sport in the world. It's essentially limited to the US, basically, maybe a little bit of Mexico and Canada and some other places. And they have their piece of the pie is 15%. So, I mean, it's considerably larger than tennis with considerably fewer fans. So that's a sport that's really, I guess you could say, overperforming. And so that is absolutely something that they are dialed in on. And Gaudenzi has a big TV background. You can really see in this plan, and I wish more people could have seen it. I didn't share it publicly because they're a private entity. So, if it had been like a school or a taxpayer type thing, I would have shared that plan. But I'm trying to not get sued. But the plan really has Gaudenzi's like fingerprint all over it. And so, as you saw in the story, he used like a 30,000 foot version of it to get hired, and then dialed in a little more when he talked to the players, and then a little more when he talked to the tournaments, and then got to that 92-page document. And one of the things was, I think, that kind of coincided well with 2020 and the pandemic was, there were in the plan, there's a lot of ideas about how to diversify revenue and kind of create new revenue streams, more consistent and like reliable revenue streams. And this falls like right at the top of that, probably. Media rights, pooling media rights is something that they see that can really be like a real benefit to everybody. I mean, because honestly, if the rights were pooled, that means they would be sold together, and that means it would be easier for fans to find tennis, because they're all going to be together. So that in itself, I mean, tennis fans should be if they don't know what to think about pooling, I think generally they should be, in favor of it, because it's bringing more money into the sport, and it should prevent the tournaments and different levels from being, kind of carved up.
So if they want to pull it all together, does that mean right now that every tournament is off on their own to find their own television deals?
No, you got some weird chunks. So, for
Okay.
example, the NFL, all the rights are together.
Mhm.
NBA, all the rights are together, and there's some little side deals and stuff with regional sports networks and things. But it's much easier to understand. Tennis, if you just look at, I mean, first of all, you got all these different countries across the world, so they have a different situation in almost every country. They do have a different situation in every country, and then you've got the Masters 1000s that are pulled together. Some of the 500s are pulled, and then I think it's 18 of the 38 250s are pulled. So not even all of them are doing that. And so just the basics of that is when you pull your rights together, you offer a better, you know, product, because you have like critical mass. And so you can see where 18 of the 38 250s pulling together, it's kind of a weird product, like
Right.
you're missing a lot. And, I don't have a map of where the 18 are, but, I don't know what the global dispersal is. It could be missing an entire region. I don't know for a fact, but so if you were able to come together and say, we will pull every level of ATP tournament in one thing, and the broadcaster got 64 tournaments, that would be way more, potentially way more valuable to the broadcaster. It would definitely be way more valuable for the ATP. They're going to get, more of a, they're going to get, well, larger money for starters. But I mean, it's just, I think it's kind of one of those, the more you learn about it, it's sort of a no brainer, really. So the issue is you got to get everybody on the same page. So that's what has always been difficult in tennis for any issue. And this is, no exception.
Phase one for the ATP is getting all of their tournaments that they own all together. But then phase
Yeah.
two is incredibly ambitious because we all know about all of tennis's different governing bodies, from the four Grand Slams to the ITF, the WTA, to the ATP. And it seems like Gaudenzi, the new CEO of the ATP, he'd love to bring everyone together. And,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone. I mean, is that remotely possible? It seems pretty ambitious.
Yeah, it is. This is like the moonshot. So I think it's feasible with the WTA, for sure. And I think that's really where they'll focus first, to try to get that sorted out. I think that would be in itself, if they got that done, would be great. And kind of the idea is to align, not merge the tours necessarily or anything like that. I don't think the WTA wants to do that anyway. They have a hard-earned brand, but what you would do, you would probably see more combined events. They would probably share a website. They'd have more common social media, pulling their rights, so then you could have all of touring tennis. You would just be missing the Grand Slams and like Davis and Fed Cup at that point. And so again, you'd have a pretty strong product. And really, these two are stronger together because if you've got, like Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal on the way out at some point, maybe you can lean on Coco and some others for some star power until you kind of get some others to step up and become sort of those really recognizable figures. So there is like a lot of benefit from working together like that. There's also like cost benefit stuff too. You can cut out some of the redundancies. So I mean, you would have like one social media group, and would that might cost some people some jobs, but I mean that would save these tours a lot of money in the long run. And I think there's a lot of momentum for that, especially with the pandemic, where they're going to need to like cut some costs. And so I think there's momentum there. The Grand Slams and the ITF, I think, are a bit more difficult. For starters, the Grand Slams have all the leverage. I mean, they make, I think it's 58% of the revenue in tennis is from 4 tournaments. And, the other whatever's left, 42 or something, is, basically what, 120 WTA and ATP tournaments, and then Fed Cup and Davis Cup. So, I mean, that is a very skewed power dynamic. And so I don't know if that's feasible. That would have to be, I don't really even know what would happen for them to really seriously consider that, because they have so much autonomy and so much power without doing that. But I think getting the ATP and WTA would more aligned in that regard would be really realistic. I also, the ITF is tricky too. I mean, Davis Cup has got such a long contract with the Cosmos Group. They're always talking about in the last year or so, kind of combining the ATP Cup and Davis Cup, and that's really tricky because there's a long contract involved. So again, that one is a little harder. But I think the WTA and ATP can make something happen pretty soon.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense, and for the Grand Slams certainly don't appear to have a lot of incentive, but ATP,
Yeah.
WTA, there seems to be some benefits there. If someone is watching or listening to this and they're thinking, I don't care how much money they make, what do I care about this? Here's one thing that's a material change for the fans. It seems that the ATP wants to move to 2-week Masters 1000s tournament. What's the logic behind that?
Yeah, this was a big section of the plan, and it's enhancing the premium product. So this is getting, and if you think about the ATP, you take away the slams, which are, they don't own or control. The premium product is the 9 Masters 1000s, and so they want to make those longer. They want to give the best players like more rest. They want to spread the calendar out, or the schedule out, so that they're not playing at the same time, and you got to pick who you want to watch. And then, I think also some of them we're going to extend to like 12 days. So it's not even a full 2 weeks. So that would give them, a little bit more rest as they're traveling to their next place. And that's the idea of keeping the stars healthy. So you want to enhance the premium product. I mean, that's really what is the idea there. And so that's why you end up with some of these 250s that are going to go into the second week of these Masters 1000s tournaments. And that's pretty controversial for some obvious reasons. But, the thinking is, again, like, we want to have those tournaments are not the premium product. I mean, they're important. They're the foundation. They offer chances at success and bigger paychecks for lower ranked players. But, they're not as important as Indian Wells or, Miami or any of the others, across the globe.
I feel for the 250s, but this seems like a
Yeah.
great thing for the fan, because anyone who's consumed a Masters 1000 tournament has said at some point, especially in the first couple days, holy crap, there's 5 amazing matches going on right now. It's a 64 player draw, and you have these incredible matches on outer courts. If you spread it out, you can simply consume more of the product as a fan. So I really like that from the fans' perspective, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And I do have some sympathy for the 250s though, and that's something I'm working on now. Is they really become almost I'm not sure how to say it, like not quite welfare beneficiaries, but they are really propped up and kind of take this one on the chin. So the tournaments that do move into the second week are going to be subsidized, although it's not clear how much they're going to get. They're not really going to be able to market players, because they're going to have guys that show up that lost in the first round, or early rounds of the coinciding Masters 1000 tournament. I don't know how big of a deal that is for 250s. I think a lot of people probably go to 250s to go to a tournament, not necessarily to see a certain guy. But there are cases where that would be. You could think like Isner in Atlanta or Winston-Salem would be a big draw, and if you didn't know if he was coming, or he wasn't able to come, that would hurt those two places where he has personal connection. And they, it's there's some other stuff. I mean, they're trying to help the 250s make money with the pooling and giving them equity stakes in some of the like ATP media and the data innovations thing that they're creating. So that should help them. But I mean, 250s, not all of them make money. That's as fair as I can say it. There's probably, I'm not sure a percentage, but their profits are like $125,000, $150,000 a year. They're not exactly crushing it, but they are important. They do give the tour like really great geographic coverage and, span the globe and things like that. But, I think one thing that may have to happen there is the number of them decrease, because the 250s don't like having the 3 event weeks. And those I think decrease from 9 to 6 with this 2022 proposed calendar. But that's with some of them going into the second week of those Masters tournaments, which, I think any of them would prefer to avoid. And so you still have 6 weeks where you've got 3 events, and that's kind of, you look at that and think like, is that a good thing to have 3 smaller tournaments going on at the same time? And I think the 250s definitely would tell you like, no way, that's rough.
Right. Just to close the book on this, what are the chances that we see these changes in 2022? Does this need to be approved, or is this pretty much hey, this is our plan, this is what's going to happen?
Yeah, it needs to be approved, and I think they're trying to do that by the end of the year. That was the original plan. Of course, things have gotten in the way, but the pandemic, but also the PTPA is a bit unforeseen. But I think there's a chance, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think the negotiations would be, serious, and I think the 250s are going to need more information on some of this stuff, like the subsidies. I know the Masters 1000s tournaments are going to want to know how much is their category fee increasing now that they have category protection for 5 decades or whatever. I'm sure their fee is going to go way up, and they'll want to know how much. So there may be some negotiations around that as well. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, the pandemic is like the wild card and all that as well. So in a normal year, it would be challenging to get all these people on the same page, and so let alone with what's going on. In some cases I think that will make people move quicker, and in some cases I think it'll slow things down. So it's hard to say.
Let's hit on the PTPA since you mentioned it. There was this big revolution, this wave during the Western and Southern Open, and now it's gone pretty quiet. Some of the main criticisms were the timing of it or the vagueness of their plans. Some of the people who built it up as a great thing just pointed out to the systematic imbalances that exist in tennis. What's next for this association? Because we haven't heard much from them recently.
Yeah. So Gaudenzi told me that the PTPA and ATP are waiting till after the ATP Tour finals to start like talking seriously, I guess. And that's going to be a big deal. But, I think in the meantime, I think that's good for the PTPA because it can give them some time to get their, ducks in a row. It was something that they had been thinking about for a long time, but when it happened, there were a lot of aspects that were not buttoned up. And so while they had been talking and thinking about this for a long time, it not everything was in place when they rolled it out. And so, I mean, to be blunt, it was like a really terrible rollout. They couldn't have launched in really a much worse of a way. And I'm not saying that they don't have validity, or like I think some of their arguments definitely have validity. I think conflicts of interest are going to slowly like drain the sport, dry. And that's something they're really against. I think they also could do with outside help, sort of like a union head, although they can't unionize, but somebody that's not necessarily a tennis person, who doesn't have any of these conflicts, but that is, a sports business person and understands the game. I think somebody like that would help them, because they're players running this group and they're not business people, even though some of them know what they're talking about, but they're simply not. So there's legitimacy to what they're trying to talk about, but it's just confusing why they didn't think that they could do that within the system, which compared to many other leagues, sports across the country, across the world is, set up fairly favorably to the players. They do have more of a voice than a lot of players groups across the world. And they don't have, although they may disagree right now, they don't have a traditionally directly confrontational relationship with the management side, the tournament side, as opposed to like sports like Major League Baseball and the NBA and the NFL and MLS, where you have strikes, it doesn't get more contentious than that. And so you've never had that or you haven't had that in tennis in a long time. So I just think they, I'm not quite sure what they wanted to do. And that's where a lot of people are confused. They didn't have a platform ready. They didn't really have a structure ready. And then the timing was brutal. It's been a bad year for tennis, especially, very hard year for a global sport. And, just as it was getting going, first Grand Slam back, to announce this, I just thought was kind of tone deaf and just made them look bad. Honestly, I think it undercut their argument, And then the other thing down that avenue is really their beef, to me, I think, is with the Grand Slams. That's where the money is to be made, where they can get a bigger share. And so again, unveiling yourself right now without being completely organized and having solidarity. I mean, you can't go to the slams right now and say we want more money, especially given what they're trying to do, to have these big tournaments right now. So I just think they just missed the mark on their launch. And then probably the most important thing is if they don't have solidarity, it's going to go nowhere. And right now, the four most famous players in the game are against them. And you saw the player council, they just basically reinforced it with people that are not in favor of the PTPA. So, I mean, they essentially in some way lost their voice at the table through the normal means, which ensures that they'll have to do it more aggressively. And that always confused me when Vasek and the others would say, we're not doing this to be aggressive towards the ATP or to, antagonize them or whatever. I mean, that's nice. And you can be polite and, be nice on the face of it. But their very action was aggressive towards the ATP Tour because it was basically saying, we want to take out the body that you have for players and put our body in. I mean, that they have to agree to that, obviously. And so, you're that in its nature is a bit of an aggressive request, when this system has been in place for 30 years. So, but I would just say, like, the thing people need to think about with the PTPA is if they don't get, major majority of players, including, those important ones, like, there's no shot. It has no chance. So I think that's probably what they're working on. I'm guessing. I haven't heard from them in a while. I think they're, maybe focusing on tennis right now. But, they told me they were good with Gaudenzzi's plan, the strategic plan. Like, they love that. So it's kind of a weird situation where they don't have an issue with management. They have an issue with the structure. And so the confusing thing to me is, why would you not work within that structure to try to change it instead of just pulling out and saying, we're not participating in the structure, but let us be in the structure. Or, I don't know. It's confusing.
Yeah, there's a lot there. A lot of good insights. I don't have that much to add, but we'll follow the story and we'll, hopefully get more clarity about what exactly they're looking for, because I think we are still waiting on that. A bit of breaking news late last week: Tennis Channel grabbed full rights to all ATP tournaments here in the United States. So ESPN will only broadcast 3 tournaments on the year, which is the Australian Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. Everything else is going Tennis Channel's way. I'll ask you pretty vaguely, what were your reaction to that?
Well, this is a culmination of a 15-year effort by the Tennis Channel. So for them, it's like a huge win. I mean, like, this is what they set out to do. Almost, they got those 3 remaining, but I'm sure they're setting their sights on them at some point. So for them, it's a major win. The question for me is, and I think for a lot of people is, does TV or streaming attract casual fans anymore? And so Tennis Channel has become synonymous with, avid fans, people that are really like tennis junkies that are going to be watching, if they're in the US, they're going to be watching a tournament in the Czech Republic at 9 a.m. while they read the paper or whatever. And so people were concerned, I think, that tennis is going to be on a channel that is not a mainstream channel. It is on cable still, and they claim 60 million viewers, but, so are a lot of other channels as well that probably don't exactly have 60 million viewers. We also don't know anything about their streaming numbers because they don't publish those. But so it's on a niche channel to a degree, but I don't immediately think that that's a bad thing, because to me, like, the question for me is, like, does TV or streaming attract casual fans? I mean, do people stumble onto stuff anymore? The way we view things now is a lot different, than when you used to flip the channel. Like, that's a very different different experience now. And so that ATP strategic plan had a lot of interesting stuff about media, as you surmised, including like, let me read this: 55% of sports fans are consuming live sports, watching games and matches. The other 45 consists of things they're watching, consists of highlights, off-field content, in-play clips, etc. And then you've got a sport like tennis, which is really driven by stars and individuals, a lot of whom are social media very savvy, very, very good at it. And, like somebody like Coco Gauff or Naomi Osaka or Tsitsipas that are digital natives. It's just what they've grown up with and they're used to it. They don't have to make this effort. They don't have their agent necessarily nudging them to post something or whatever. So to me, that 45% seems like where you drive new fans, where you attract people with tweeners, and people getting, hitting lines people in the throat with the ball, or things like that, kind of controversial highlight, interesting moments. I think that in this day and age is what's driving fandom in a lot of ways. And I mean, I think tennis was like so far ahead of a lot of sports with its focus on the individual. I mean, you have a lot of fans of the NBA that are LeBron fans. They don't care what team he plays on. And tennis, I think, really needs to highlight that more, and make more of an effort to promote the personalities, because that's who people are going to say, oh, Tsitsipas, interesting, like, good looking guy, really weird, deep thinker, maybe, maybe kind of fake, but still kind of funny and thought-provoking. Like, let me see more of this guy. Where do I find him? And then they get to Tennis Channel. Like, that's where I feel that it's going. And so that's why I don't think it's a negative thing necessarily for tennis, because tennis is such a niche sport in the US already. It's really in some ways struggles with ESPN, because I don't think it gets the coverage it should get. So, while ESPN is maybe still willing to do that on the slams, I don't think they're willing to do that on other tournaments. So I think it's a good thing. And it's really down to the sport and even Tennis Channel to promote the people and stories and et cetera that are going to drive new fans, as opposed to relying on, channel surfers to find tennis. Because the good thing is, when you do convince people that tennis is interesting and worth a look, now it's mainly on one channel. So it's a lot easier to find, as opposed to, there's countries, I had a list somewhere, but it's Australia and I think Germany that have like 6 or 7 different broadcasters of tennis. I mean, that would be,
you don't want that.
That's a challenge to navigate, and tennis is already not easy on a TV schedule, because matches run long or short, or people, have to pull out because of an injury, or, so it's not a really TV friendly sport to begin with. So I think having it on a channel that does not care if there is somebody pulling out injury wise or whatever, or that a match runs 5 sets and goes 5 hours and 55 minutes, I think that's good for the sport. I think that's very good.
And ESPN's other programming legs do not promote tennis. So it's just it just pops up on a kind of this infrequent basis. And I have so much trouble imagining, just one of my friends who's not interested in tennis. I don't think that they're going to flip on an Indian Wells match. And if they had no interest in watching the match before, I don't think they're watching the match. And I tend to fall on the side of, it's just an old fashioned way of looking at things. I don't think the move to Tennis Channel is going to leave the potential for new tennis fans in the dust. I'm not really.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, I agree.
Let's end on FOXTEN versus Hawkeye. Are you looking for your dog?
No, it's my wife.
Oh, okay. Because I thought do you have a dog?
I do. I have a wife and a dog. I have both.
Okay. Because I thought I heard a dog.
I did too. That's why I was like, is there a ghost in here? And I turn around. She's trying to get her headset for work.
Let's end on FOXTEN because you spoke to their CEO. FOXTEN is a digital imaging technology. I'd call it probably the only competitor with Hawkeye.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk over the two, I wanted to call it a clay court season. Even in the abbreviated clay court season we had, there was so much discussion about Hawkeye on clay and ball marks and how ineffective and what a mess this entire system is. Fox 10 might be the solution here. Are they attacking this as we have the best technology on clay, especially?
I think so. Yeah. And I didn't realize this, but they're used in 30 tournaments. So they're already on a bunch of different surfaces. They're in a lot of Asian tournaments. So they are definitely, I would say, number two. But when it comes to clay, I think they're number one. And I think that's at the moment unquestioned. And they're like in the pole position to get approved. You have to, it's like a technical committee that kind of consists of somebody from all of the 7, biggies. And so you kind of have to do the trials, and then, there's a process. And so their trials got upended a little bit this year got upended this year by the pandemic. And so they were able to do Rio, and then they did a Fed Cup match, the Rio ATP tournament and a Fed Cup match. And then they were going to do Charleston WTA, and that got canceled. They were going to do Madrid, that got canceled. And there might've been one other. But anyway, so their trial on clay is slowed down, but and they pointed out to me they're also working on like a version of FOXTENN Live, something that would call like Hawkeye Live was doing at the U.S. Open. So, but yeah, they are, and this is like, it's complicated. So clay is the most difficult surface, as everybody knows, and one of the main reasons for that, especially when it comes to these high-tech ways of calling line calling, is that the surface changes like every point. It's not the same as when it started, whereas a hard court is not going to change like that. Even a grass court is not going to change nearly as much. And so a lot of the impression I got was that other technologies use kind of a preconceived image of the court, whereas one of the things that FOX10 does, and I think this is one of the things that slows it down some, and I think something they've really tried to work on, is it's updating that throughout. And so that's a big difference, because you've got the most updated version of the court. I mean, every time somebody walks somewhere on the court, they're impacting it. And so, and then the other thing is, you've got the potential with Hawkeye is like when you have you got the line and the ball's over top, the ball landed out, but as it compressed, part of it went over the line. And so where you've got FOX10, they're shooting from the ground, you can see that it landed out. They have grainy photos and they're kind of difficult to see on TV. That's not something they're really overly worried about. I think they are committed to accuracy, but it's not as TV friendly as Hawkeye is. And so I think that's something that they have to definitely improve for the broadcast aspect of it. Because I mean, let's face it, that's a bigger deal than the however many thousands are in the stadium. So next year is going to be big for them. I think they're trying to pick up the pieces and resume these trials and get that sorted out. I know they've been in conversations with Roland Garros, but I don't know how serious those are because they didn't respond to my emails. So, it could just be that they're aware of them or I don't know if they're like, where we want to do it next year, but I think that's coming down the line. And to me, it's like, I get that there's traditional aspects of sports, but if people are not figuring this out yet about me, I mean, I like, to keep it pushing, let's move it forward. And the clay argument thing with the lines, people pointing at the spots, cute, like a little bit, but like when it comes down to like the French, Roland Garros, I mean, you don't want major matches decided by trying to figure out which, they remind me of like the one giant step for mankind on the moon. You don't want people like trying to figure out which step was the first, I mean, it just seems like unnecessarily old fashioned. I wouldn't say that you have to use like Hawkeye Live or FOX10 Live necessarily, although I'm like personally I would prefer those, but I don't think you have to get rid of people fully. I think it is a cool element, but that's just a lot of pressure on the umpires that is really unfair. And then especially this past tournament where a lot of broadcasters were using Hawkeye like on the TV, sort of undercutting the umpires. I mean, I didn't think that was really right. I mean, VAR in soccer has got a lot of critics, but it's accessible to everybody. Everybody sees the same thing. So it's not like you can't, you don't have to yell at your TV and say it was out, like you could see it,
Yeah.
that person has the same person talking in their ear, and so that's the way to do something like this. And so they either need to do all of it, and implement Fox 10 or whatever technology, or get rid of it on the broadcast, because it's not really fair. And especially if you're using another company's technology on the broadcast that's not approved by any of the tours or the governing bodies. I mean, how do you know that their thing is accurate when it's not even being tested by the tours to be used in actuality? So, I mean, I'm not pitching for Fox 10, but I just thought that was
Yeah.
like a very valid and fair point.
I still have questions about how accurate Hawkeye is on clay, because I mean, we've heard, I think, a lot of theories, and as you said, the court always changing
Yeah.
and factors like that. But I feel that there's a lack of expert voices on this topic, really
Yeah.
explaining this is the margin of error. I have not heard from anyone, because of the difficulties of clay, this is the margin for error for Hawkeye, because we know on hard court it's 3.6 millimeters. Well, if clay is more inaccurate, okay, well, what is it on clay? And we haven't heard these specifics from anyone.
Right. Right. And that's like, needing Tennis Channel to give you the streaming subscribers. I mean, they're just not going to do that. Or any numbers they give you, you have to like take it with a grain of salt. So
Mm-hmm.
so of course they're going to give you the hard court number because they feel strong and confident about that, but they probably do not about their clay court percentages. So yeah, I mean, it's like a really, really complicated thing. I mean, when I was talking to people about the new courts at the US Open, I mean, the complexity of that was wild, and that was hard court, so you can only imagine that's something that changes every play. I mean, every time the ball is bounced, it's a really interesting surface. I mean, I don't know that you really have a sports surface like it, except maybe like if you had, I don't know how ice works, but hockey, I would
Maybe
think
bowling.
maybe bowling with the like
Bowl.
oil and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they go crazy with the oil
Yeah.
patterns and stuff. I don't know anything about it, but
Right. Right. I mean, so there's others that are weird like that, but I mean, it's just it seems to me it's just if I ran a clay tournament, I would want to be keeping up with everybody else, because it makes it even more of kind of a antiquity, and if you're going to have uniformity across the slams and the tours, they need to have line calling help on clay as well. I think umpires would probably, appreciate it. I'm sure they would.
well, Bret, this has been great. For everyone, remember, you can read Bret McCormick at the Sports Business Journal, where he does awesome reporting on tennis. Thanks so much for taking the time and coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it.